This is the story of Annabelle and Hazel DeVille. It's called Annabelle and Hazel's Friendly Fall Festival by me, Maylene Jones. This story contains over 1,000 iterations of words with L in all positions of words, including initial, final, medial, blends, and in multiple positions of the word. Annabelle and Hazel's Friendly Fall Festival. The fall fell peacefully into place while leading in a cooler climate. It was a monumental relief following a particularly sweltering summer. Leaves fell in flurries in countless colors of mellow yellow until each leaf eventually fell softly on the floor, collectively blanketing the welcoming world. 'Twas finally Hallows Eve in rural Old Salem, Pennsylvania, where, in a hilly village, on a tall hill, in the elegant Hotel DeVille Inn, lived 11-year-old identical twins, Annabelle and Hazel DeVille. The siblings were hurriedly assembling their special Halloween clothing. They had planned on walking with their girlfriends all the way to the fall festival, which was being held at the local high school football field. Hazel wore paisley bell-bottoms with tassels and a silver belt buckle. She pulled on a blood orange blouse with flared sleeves, which had symbols and letters on it that read love and balance. She placed false eyelashes below her eyelids and applied black nail polish onto her long fingernails. Annabelle was an elemental elf with tangled hair, actually called elf locks. She glued on elf ears, slid on long purple fingerless gloves, and slipped on curl-toed clogs that jingled. The girls grabbed their helpful flashlights and glow sticks and left to meet their classmates, Blaire and Stella Bellucci, with whom they loved to play make-believe in theatrical arts club after school. The twins' mother, Grizelda DeVille, pleaded, "Be careful at the carnival," as the girls were leaving. "We will be, Girl Scouts honor," pledged the girls sincerely, and slipped out the luxurious lobby, leaving behind aisles of jack-o'-lantern smiles. Along the way, Hazel plucked a single yellow petal from the witch hazel which grew close to a cluster of marigolds in the neglected plot on Huckleberry Hill. It was on that hill where miserable Grizelda, the elderly bedlam, supposedly still lived in the crumbling villa after, most likely, as the locals believed, 1,000,000,000,000,012 years. "I feel like you shouldn't steal flower petals from this alarming lot," Annabelle alerted Hazel. "You're asking for trouble. Plus, you'll have loads of bad luck." When they passed the local Appaloosa horse stables on Brambleberry Boulevard, Annabelle blew a dandelion to wish Hazel well. As her lips blew, the seeds floated away delicately on their lightweight umbrellas until they were no longer invisible, and in fact, invisible. The siblings joined Blaire and Stella Bellucci where they lived in the cul-de-sac on Larch Lane, which was lined with arches of lanky, leaning larches called lyrics in Latin. It was exactly the golden hour, just as the schoolgirls had planned earlier in Madame Ursula's dreadful spelling class. Blaire was dressed as a darling calavera for Dia de los Muertos, complete with skeleton makeup, lace, and colorful flowers which she had looped among the swirls along her skeleton skull. Stella was a deadly rag doll with scarlet locks. She wore leggings with black and yellow horizontal lines, most likely like haggardly old Grizelda wore. "Cool!" exclaimed the girls, relishing their marvelous alter egos. The girls locked arms and simultaneously passed the cornfield, which was full of plenty of corn stalks, followed by the tall silo in the spectacular sunflower field. Finally, they passed the leaky lagoon at the outer limits of Salem, where the people could enter the carnival. String lights with old-fashioned light bulbs lit up the whole place in a special way in which regular light bulbs couldn't. A mystical black plaque read, "Never look back." As they carefully lurched through the portal, like a thread through a needle hole, a wonderful feeling came reeling in as if under a magical spell, thus thinning the veil between real and paranormal. The excitable girls could already smell the caramely kettle corn. A lively clown named Pickles juggled, flipping several bowling pins while rolling around on roller skates with light-up wheels. Another clown named Bobbles blew bubbles while balancing on an unstable unicycle. A lovely ballerina blew flames from her lips while perfectly hula hooping with double hula hoops. People clapped, animal balloons were blown, and toddlers looked on with eyes glinting with wonderful wonder. All of Salem's school children were immensely cheerful because the carnival was so special. Each family had built little cubicles for playing carnival games. One place was built for lacing oodles of garlic clove noodle necklaces. Obviously, these helped keep Vladimir the vampire from Transylvania away, while also looking fashionable. Another cubicle was built for assembling glittery goblins and glitzy gargoyles made specifically for displaying on people's mantles. The electric lightning bolt roller coaster rumbled gutturally. It quickly barreled past, blasting fast in a blink of an eye like a galaxy traveling at light speed. It escalated unexpectedly before finally lunging and loopity-looping. Its rider's arms and blood-curdling wails flailed and trailed for miles and miles accordingly. Flabbergasted, Hazel flinched and leapt lickety-split to the left while squealing and landing perfectly into Stella's sweaty palms. Hazel laughed it off and dusted off her bell-bottoms as Stella placed her back on the ground. LOL, silly Hazel spelled, and the girls rolled their eyes, chuckling. At twilight, the quadruple group of girls played Baubles for Apples at the Cruella Caramella stall. Stella and Golden Delicious apples bubbled in large barrels of liquid. Stella Bella plunged surprisingly wella, winning a cauldron of caramel in which to swirl plump apples. "Swella!" yelled Stella. The demolition dollhouse was an enclosure in which demolishing love seats, stools, and lamps with featherful pillows was not only all right, but an obligation. At the Unlucky Ducky, scowling rubber duckies floated in a cesspool of terrible, horrible troll slobber, while people tried their luck at winning plushies by hurling circular plastic loops onto the glaring mallard's shoulders. If one was lucky, one would lasso correctly, but most likely one would hear a plink and a clink before one's loop would end up splashing into the pool of drool, and sadly, the unlucky player would lose. Some ghoul close by walloped a gavel-like mallet, launching a ball to a bell, thus winning first place, then proudly displaying his clinking metal medal. Girls contemplated getting freshly plopped plopcorn and plopping down at the film noir to catch a flick, like Godzilla or Gremlins, but the smells that were blowing in the slightly chilly breeze made Hazel's bowel growl uncontrollably. Angrily, loudly, and like a drill sergeant, Hazel proclaimed, "Quickly, ladies! We need platters piled aplenty with delicious morsels immediately!" Thusly, the girls hungrily got a hold of a medley of Halloween-themed edibles for nibbling, like deviled eggs and Hilda's pretzels, utensils being optional. The gluttonous girls plopped themselves up on a low wall of rectangular hay bales and placed their sinful collection of plates on a spool-shaped table. Hazel had selected a plethora of goodies, but first she gobbled up some apple cobbler from the Goblin Gobbler, while Annabelle had peach cobbler from the same place. They slurped up mouthfuls of apple cider slushies from the rotten apple, giggling gleefully while guzzling down each sloppy swallow. "Glug glug," gulped Annabelle. Stella Bellalucci funneled funnel cake down her pie hole. Blaire LeClaire had an oblong eclair filled with maple filling. When the plates were clean and the girls were full, it was time for the belching contest at the bloated belly of the beast cubicle. Being the fullest, Hazel did exceptionally well with an embarrassingly glorious belch from the lowest of the low location in her smelly belly. "Blech," chuckled Annabelle, wrinkling her nose disgustedly. "Congratulations," laughed Stella sarcastically at Hazel, who had won a plush goblin. Later that moonlit night, the ladies frolicked into the fall gala ball hall. It was decorated with ghostly garlands, blinking strobe lights, and a spherical, flickering disco ball. The purplish-blue hue of the blacklight made everyone glow fluorescently. The ball hall was full of all the gals and ghouls from class. The blokes from Blaire's biology class with Mr. Lyle Bolton, Blake, Gabriel, and Luca did a silly line dance near the most popular clique in school, Coralina Carlisle, Matilda Looney, and Velma Violet. Will the Beast and Violet Luminaria from Stella's algebra class waltzed wholeheartedly to the polka polka. Angels danced with devils harmoniously. Like gazelles to a lion, lambs leaped with wolves, but without becoming a meal. An ugly cyclops danced the salsa with a beautiful fluttering butterfly. Blaire joined an ensemble of dancing skeletons who rattled helter-skelter to the all-time bestseller, The Chiller, by Mikeson Jackal. Stella flirted with a fella at the table with the sludgesicles. The couple was poking the jelly eyeballs that were floating in the bubbling dragon blood punch bowl. They jokingly said, bloop, each time one plunged below the surface, and bloop when they resurfaced, as if blinking back to life. This was quite hysterical to them. Someone called out the winners of the Riddler raffle over the loudspeaker, but was barely audible over all the hullabaloo. The girls danced the shuffle-scuffle and the flubber-blubber to all the eerily melodic classics. They clumsily whirled and twirled in a circle till they were completely unfurled. Their schoolmates and all the people of Old Salem wiggled to the jiggle-blop till well past the toll of the farewell bell in the belfry. Soon it was really late and blustery, so the sleepy and windblown siblings lured and wheedled Stella Bellucci and Blaire Leclerc for a sleepover at their dwelling at the Hotel DeVille Inn, using the allure of hot chocolate and marshmallows. All the gals said so long to their other pals before gambling on home with their pillowcases full of loot. Leaving the carnival, the girls passed the last enclosure called the Fortune Teller's Castle. They glimpsed a glance past the billowing blackout blinds at the mystical crystal ball. They wondered if the fortune teller was really clairvoyant and could tell what lies ahead, or if she simply told astrology and storytelling. Suddenly, a black cat yowled. It was on the prowl and flicked its tail exactly when an owl landed in the middle of an almost leafless bloodgood maple tree. The yowling and flapping startled the excitable girls, who immediately left on their way. A flock of bleak, beaked blackbirds with yellow eyes that were perched on a telephone wire flew into the black and blue clouds that were looming heavily below the moon, light's glow, and the innumerable heavenly bodies that were out of this world. The girls yelped and hurriedly linked arms like bedazzled paper doll cutouts and speed-walked home. Black cats and owls and blackbirds, oh my, the girls nervously sang, remembering an old classic film, The Blizzard of Claws, with a lost girl named Dahlia and her little dog Lulu. The moon lit the path as they passed the lagoon, which they had done seemingly long, long ago. Then they passed the sunflower field with the tall silo and the cornfield of plenty. They passed the cul-de-sac on Larch Lane and the stables on Brambleberry Boulevard. Last, but definitely not least, they carefully passed Grizelda's on Huckleberry Hill. They heard a muffled cackle, which they believed was Grizelda. They were so irrationally alarmed that they were unable to look back. They fled so quickly that they fumbled all over each other's jumbling legs, almost stumbling into the wilted blossoms Hazel had stolen earlier. Upon their arrival, safely at the Hotel DeVille Inn, the jack-o'-lantern candles were still lit, glimmering and twinkling in the hotel lobby, giving off a slight otherworldly glow. Glenda slowly materialized and flipped on the light switch of the candelabra, welcoming the girls and their guests home. Slip on your fleece slippers, counseled Glenda softly and groggily, after a long night of a litany of adorable pillowcase-wielding, cloak-embellished children continuously calling on the butler by the doorbell and greedily collecting satchels of licorice bubblegum and gloopy globstoppers. As the lights flickered on, a bewildering silhouette appeared to be leaning over a stool near the yellow blaze of the crackling fireplace. The flummoxed girls suddenly realized the identity of the unexpected visitor. The bewildering lady slowly smiled an almost toothless smile. Lo and behold, sitting there on the stool was none other than Grizelda. The girls were startled at her presence, but just after a little bit of time spent babbling near the flickering flame turned glowing coals, they were relieved to learn that Grizelda was not at all miserable, but in fact quite a lovely soul. Hazel even apologized for plucking at Grizelda's blossoms. She even volunteered herself and Annabelle to mow her lawn and clip her landscape. "We'll also gladly help," exclaimed Stella and Blaire. "Gobbledygook, and indubitably," replied Grizelda gratefully. "Splendid, then it's all settled," gleamed Glenda proudly. "Now hurry along to sleep." The gals strolled down the long hallway toward the last bedroom. Annabelle noticed a little problem. There were holes in all of their loot-filled pillowcases, leaving behind a long tail-like trail of their Halloween loot all along the hall, including half-licked lollipops, saltwater taffy, Twizzles, and colorful bubblegum gumballs. Hopefully that's the last of Hazel's bad luck, Annabelle proclaimed. Hazel, Annabelle, Stella, and Blaire changed into their comfortable clothes, including long johns. Then, they held golden chalices of hot chocolate with marshmallows and a bowl of clementines for peeling. They snuggled warmly in their plaid flannel blankets and fluffy sleeping bags. "Listen," Annabelle told the girls in an almost silent mumble. They closed their mouthfuls of mouth side to side, listening intently. A lone wolf howled for a long time. Hazel believed it was probably a lonely werewolf howling at the full moon under the weeping willow by the lake. The girls looked at each other, marveling wearily at the visualization. They laughed and cackled, recalling the lost loot and all the pleasure at the carnival, till, eventually, they finally fell asleep like logs. The end.